Two. Hi, everybody. My name is Kathy, and I'm recovering one day at a time in the Worldwide Al-Anon Family Group. Hi. I wanted to thank, first of all, Bob for the invitation to come out here to Stateline, and for Marnie for staying in touch, and Kristen for being a wonderful hostess, getting me at the airport and making sure I was okay. I really appreciate it. I said to my husband before I left, the nice thing about speaking in AA conferences, nobody comes to the Al-Anon speaker. And it's a really good practice for an Al-Anon conference I have to do in January. But anyway, why are you all here? I don't know. I would also like to thank Lee Taper, who, the tape guy, who called me and said, Bob's got you from 10 to 12. Will you really speak for 2 hours? Well, I could, but no, I won't. As a retired high school teacher, I know it's the first 20 minutes, and then after that, unless you've got fireworks, you're gone. Nobody's paying any attention to what you're saying anyway. But so, I was thinking this morning about that thought, and what I guess I want to say is that sometimes what is important is to say what's really important right at the get-go, instead of when I'm done, I'm like, oh, I forgot to say the most important thing. And if I were to think of what's really important, Al-Anon message, it would be this: you're enough for today. You are enough for today. No matter where you are in your recovery, you're enough for today. That's important in Al-Anon. And the second thing is this. What is the second thing? The second thing is this. You're not alone. You're not alone. Because alcoholism can take one from, it can take you from such an overwhelming sense of loneliness to an abundance of community. And that's what's really important, I think, about recovery. I think it was Don last night was talking about the difference that he had noticed, or that someone had noticed about AA. And I can say for me, I got into Al-Anon April the 5th, 1982. And when I came into Al-Anon, there was such a sense of togetherness. When I used to teach high school, I would take a group of high school students who came from families where alcoholism was present. And one of my students said to me, Mrs. Hicken, I hate when they say alcoholism is a disease like diabetes or cancer. And I said, well, Katie, what does it feel like to you? And she said, I think it's much more like rabies. And that's the thing. Because when alcoholism came to our home, it didn't just come for my husband. It came for all of us. It didn't matter who was bitten first. We all ended up foaming at the mouth. And that's why, this idea of it being a fellowship, I began to notice after I'd been in the program for a while, and I followed 4 sister-in-laws into Al-Anon. They were in the AA, and I just got swept into Al-Anon on their coattails. But I always felt like there was this fellowship. But after a few years, I would hear this tension, which I didn't understand. I was invited to this woman-to-woman thing, which I'd never really heard of, but I went, and I was like, well, what is this woman-to-woman? Well, it's to bridge the gap between AA women and Al-Anon women. And I said, well, I didn't know there was a gap. And this woman said, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The Al-Anon women are afraid the AA women are going to take their husbands. And I said, they'll do that? What an act of service. And I'll just give you an example of the fellowship. So some years ago, I had I met Bob back in the early 90s, and I remember one time we were talking about how awful it would be if one of our kids ended up alcoholic, blah, 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 blah. So in the year 2002, I have a daughter who lives up in Chicago, and she said to me, she called and she said, "Mom, I think I'm going to have to do something about my drinking." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, this is what my husband said to me last night. When you drink, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells." And she said, "I've been around long enough to know what that means. What should I do?" And I said, "Well, you can call Chicago AA, or I can make a call and get a name for you." So she said, "Okay." So I call Bob out here in Nevada, and I say, "Who do you have in Chicago?" So he gives me a name, and I give her the name, and she makes the call. And the next day, this guy had her in an AA meeting, and she called me, and she said, the group he took me to was called the California group, and I thought, oh, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, those people are Nazis. She's going to hate this. Well, 22 years later, that's still her home group. So just an example of what do I know. I don't know anything about somebody else's recovery. Al-Anon teaches me I have to keep the focus on me, and that's what's important. So let's see. I heard, what did I hear? Oh, Bill, last night I was reminded that one time we were at a convention together. I don't know if you remember this, Bill. We were sitting at a table together in the back, and somebody was talking about the fifth tradition, Al-Anon fifth tradition, which is, our primary purpose is to help families of alcoholics. We do this by understanding and encouraging our alcoholic relatives. And we do this by working the 12 steps of AA ourselves. So Bill said to me, "How do you understand and encourage alcoholics?" And I said, "I have no idea. But I know how to discourage. I know how to discourage, and I know how to misunderstand. And I can do that by taking things personally." That's a big thing you hear in Al-Anon is don't take it personally. Never, since I've been in Al-Anon, did I think that anybody was directing their disease towards me. And that's important. I did not grow up with alcoholism. I grew up with a mother and a father who adored one another, 5 brothers and sisters. We were close. We're still close today. Some of that's because we're spread out, but it doesn't matter. Whatever, we get along well. However, I will tell you this. My dad was a newscaster. And, he would come home from work and he would say, "Oh, there was a woman today that murdered her husband, chopped him up in little pieces, put him in a trunk, and sent him to Cleveland." And I was like, that is so cool. I love that. He was covering the riots in Cincinnati, and he came home and somebody had thrown bricks through his window. What the hell am I trying to say? Thank you. And I thought, oh my God, that is so exciting. I think I'm the only one of the 6 of us that felt that way. But I have always been attracted to those who do things very differently. I have heard people say, "I am addicted to alcoholics." I hear that over and over in Al-Anon. I don't feel that way. What I'm addicted to is approval, not alcoholics. However, I really do enjoy people who are outrageous, and oftentimes they happen to be alcoholic. I don't know. So I grew up in this family, I like to say a middle child in the Middle West, Middle America, it was not normal in that my parents were really funny people. And that made us a little different because we all have this quirky sense of humor. But they really believed, my mother always believed, as my father did, that in the end, everything was going to be okay. She would say to me when I was little, if there was something that came up in my life, it'll be okay by the time you're married. And I would think, I'm 7. What is it? But there was this sense that everything was going to be okay. You pour on top of that 16 years, actually over 16 years, of an education delivered to me by these wonderful nuns who always pounded into us this idea of doing for others, love and service. You know, I'm not okay unless you're okay. If you don't have something, I should supply you with it. I mean, there was, so for many of us, ingrained in us is this sense of service. And that's a wonderful message. But when it came to alcoholism, I had no idea what the next right, loving thing to do was. I didn't know. When I ran into alcoholism, this is how I felt. I felt like I had been equipped with a parka and thick boots and warm gloves and earmuffs, and then I had been dropped in a desert. Nothing I had seemed to prepare me for what I was dealing with. It led me into such a state of bewilderment, fear, resentment, and loneliness. I mean, that for me was the worst, because I'm an extrovert. But to have to hide what's going on and not feeling like you can share it with anybody and never thinking that anybody will understand what you're dealing with, it gutted me. It just simply gutted me. I felt like I had been hollowed out by the disease of alcoholism. So, here I am in this funny family. Everything's great with this attraction to, wildness, I guess. I don't know, the boys that used to eat meat on Friday. Wow! Thought that took a certain amount of courage. Anyway, so I'm going to fast forward here. So I'm in college, and I'm going out with the nicest guy one could ever imagine, a guy that sends you flowers for absolutely no reason during the week. I'd come through my dorm, and there would be this big bouquet of flowers, and there would be a little message, have a wonderful week. And it was just so touching. But this gal that I kind of knew called me in the summer between my junior and senior year and said, "Hey, my brother is in Marine Corps flight school down in Meridian, Mississippi, and he's coming to Cincinnati for Labor Day weekend. I have fixed him up with everybody I know. I'm out of people. Would you be willing to go out with him?" Somebody like me who has an addiction to approval, who wants to do what's the right thing to do and the brave and courageous thing to do and the patriotic thing to do, of course, I say, yes, I'll go. And so I went. And he was just everything that you can imagine a Marine Corps pilot would be. He was cocky, he said what was on his mind, he didn't walk, he swaggered, he was funny, he was good looking, and that really was the end for me. I mean, that was it for me. One of our first dates, he took me up in a plane over the Ohio River, and so when he was on leave, and he said to me, "Do you know what a stall is?" I'm like, "No, I had never been in a plane before." So he stalls the plane, of course, and we're heading, nose first into the Ohio River. He's like, "You better pull it up. You better pull it up." I mean, what? Anyhow, after that date, I say to the woman who will soon be my sister-in-law, "I think I'm in love." She said, "That's not love. That's fear." Anyhow, so that's what happened, I just got out of school, went to Chicago actually to teach, and was only there half a year when came home for Christmas. My boyfriend at the time, the Marine, came to Cincinnati for his Christmas break, and he told his family he had an announcement to make. And we were all waiting to hear what that might be. And the announcement was that we were getting married. Well, I didn't know that we were going to get married, but you see, this is what's important for you to hear. I go along with it because I'm averse to making important decisions because I don't want to be held responsible. And so if I allow you to make those decisions and the whole thing blows up in our faces, it's not me, it's you. And so that practice of making it about you came early on for me. And I'll tell you this, if you ever have, I mean, I don't know how many of you might be an al-anon, because I don't know how many of you have friends or relatives who are alcoholic. But, if you ever wanted to investigate al-anon, just by going simply to a meeting, I would just say be very careful about what meetings you go to, because there is nothing sicker than a sick al-anon meeting. And this is why. Because if you go to a meeting and they're talking about him and she and they, that's not helpful. I go to meetings where I hear, this is what I did, this is how I practice these principles in my affairs. This is what works for me. This is what I have found can be a challenge, and this is what I'm working on. I'm using this step. I called my sponsor. I'm reading the literature. Those are all helpful things in order for me to recover from the disease, the family disease of alcoholism. I don't have the time. Really, I don't really have the time anymore to go to what I call a wine and cheese al-anon meeting. It's just not good. So anyway, be careful is all I would say. Now I'm totally lost. Where am I? So I'm like, well, okay, I guess we would anyway. I mean, I would have preferred to wait till I got back from Vietnam, but that's okay. We can do that. And so that's what we did. That was December. We got married in January, and he got his orders to go to Vietnam in March of that year. So we get married January. I get pregnant in February, and in March he gets his orders. And in that short amount of time, I knew that I was in over my head. Without going into any detail, I can just tell you this: I found myself frightened a lot, because I was never sure what was coming in the door. And that was so unsettling for me, because growing up, I always knew what was coming in the door. I always felt safe and secure, always. And now I'm feeling unsettled. I don't know what's going on. I don't particularly connect it with the drinking, because after all, it's a Marine. It's, they've got Vietnam ahead of them. I expected it. But what I did notice, even with a very non-professional eye, was that his drinking was different from the others. His drinking was different. That's what I knew. So when he got his orders, I was so relieved. Couldn't wait for that guy to go to Vietnam. Now, that's not something you would ever say to anybody, especially other Marine Corps wives who are wringing their hands and wondering, what should we do? Should we all stay here in Havelock, North Carolina at Cherry Point Marine Corps Air Station? I was like, you got to be kidding me. I can't wait to go home. I can't wait to get home and figure this out. And for the next 12 and a half years, that's what I tried to do. Figure it out. Because I was raised with this belief that if you were good to others, they would be good to you. That the universe was well ordered if everybody just did what they were supposed to do. And I've always been pretty sure I knew what you were supposed to do. But here I am trying to do the right thing, and none of it's working. And I'm just totally baffled by it all. And I have this sinking feeling that somehow it's my fault. That somehow it's got to be, I'm not saying the right words, I'm not doing the right things. I don't know what to do. I'm befuddled and flummoxed. I love that word. I'm totally flummoxed. I don't know how to encourage and understand. I don't even know what's going on. So he goes off to Vietnam. I pretend like I'm upset. I'm not. I come back to Cincinnati, and I start talking, mainly to his sisters, who at that time were all drinking. But what do I know? So we're all talking, and we're all talking about him and why he's the way he is and his childhood, and we're all just sifting through all these various things. And that's the god-awful thing about this disease, is because it was so easy for me to shift that focus totally off me and onto him, onto somebody else. What's wrong with him? And that's a pattern, until I found al-anon. That's a pattern that just continued. So comes back from Vietnam, decides to use the GI Bill to go to dental school, which made absolutely no sense. I don't know about your dentist. I never had a dentist like this. But anyway, that's just, I like to say, until I saw Little Shop of Horrors. But anyway, I was like, what the? But that's what happened. So he comes back from Vietnam, decides to go to Ohio State Dental School, and the night before he was to leave, well, not quite, maybe a week before he was to leave, he was in a bar fight and was beaten badly by a bouncer and had to have surgery to correct an eye duct, tear duct in his eye. And for the next 3 years, there was no drinking. And I thought it was because of me. I thought it was because I had been, just like I had been taught by those nuns, to be silent, to suffer quietly. That's a big thing, to suffer silently. It builds character, supposedly. But anyway, I thought it was because of me, because I had been patient and I had just waited it out. And now he's not drinking, and now we can get our life turned around. And now I won't have to be fearful, and blah, 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 blah. And gets his degree. We come back to Cincinnati, and everything blew up. Everything blew up. The drinking returns, and then the drinking doesn't return, but the behavior is odd. I get drinking. I understand that. What I don't get are drugs. Those are beyond me. When I taught high school, I had a teacher come to me one morning, and she said, "Kathy, will you come to my room? I think somebody in my homeroom has been smoking marijuana. Will you come and see what you smell?" And I said to her, I have no idea about any of that. You'll have to ask somebody in the English department. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about marijuana. And I really don't. A couple of years ago, the Grateful Dead, minus Jerry Garcia, came to Cincinnati, and my daughter, who used to be a Deadhead, got tickets, and I went with her. And she said to me in the midst of it, "Now do you know what it smells like?" And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to start twirling in a minute. Anyway, so I don't know what's going on, because I can't find the alcohol. What's going on is he's writing very honestly himself prescriptions for narcotics. And that didn't take the RENEW agents, the Regional Enforcement Narcotic Unit, very long before they nailed him and threw him out of dentistry. But my part of that story is this. What was important for me then was for you never to know what was going on. When he got out of dental school at Ohio State, his family raised quarter horses, and they had a great amount of land, acres, outside of Cincinnati, where they raised these horses. And the main house where his parents lived next to it was what they called a little summer house. And we lived in that summer house until he could get established, which of course never happened. But I pretended like I had the life of Riley. It was just wonderful living in this summer house next to the main house, grazing horses behind split rail fences, overlooked the Ohio River and the hills of Kentucky. And I wanted you to think we were just having a grand time. And it was awful, because I was always filled with fear, because I didn't know what to expect next, because I was always trying to make the rough road smooth, and I didn't know what I was up against. And he was a hunter, and he would sleep with a gun next to his bed, only to protect his bird feeders from blue jays. I mean, it was just like, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Sleeping with the window open, and God forbid a blue jay would get anywhere near his bird feeders, and he would just reach behind and grab that gun, blow the crap out of that blue jay. And I would run down the stairs, because we had kids by then. I was like, don't play on this side of the house. Dad is hunting. Just get your friends across. It's just like a nightmare. That's all I can say. But this is sometimes, I'm going to jump in here and just say this one thing very fast, because I don't want to forget it. This is one thing that we can lose sight of, those of us in al-anon sometimes. Underneath all that crazy was a guy who was good-looking, he was funny, he was courageous, he was who he said he was, he never pretended to be anybody else. He was so many things. And that's the grief part that so many of us carry in Al-Anon, is because we love people who are so much more than the disease of alcoholism. And to watch them go down that slope it's painful. It's painful. And that's why it's so important, I think, to have a community of people who understand as few others do. So this is what I'm watching, and I don't know how to stop it. I don't know what to do. But one thing that I did do was I kept it from you. I tried to keep it from my parents. I tried to keep it from his family. I put on a brave face, but inside I'm dying. Inside I'm terrified, and I am hollowed out. I am hollowed out. I used to also get calls from these neighbor women because I don't know how it is in Las Vegas or wherever you're from, but in Cincinnati at any rate, where this property used to be was way out in the country. It was considered to be way out in the country. And now, of course, we've got these encroaching suburbs, and these people are moving out, building big homes around the horse farm. And I start to get calls. Hi, this is, I'm going to make up some name. This is Muggsy down the street. I'm missing my cat Bootsy. I'm like, oh, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, Bootsy. Bootsy? Yes, we let her out last night. We haven't seen her. Do you know, have you seen Bootsy up there in your property? Like, I don't know. I'll keep my eyes out for Bootsy. Phone rings. Hi. This is Candy. I live down the street. We're missing our little cat Muffy. I'm like, oh, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. So I go, because I know now he has these night glasses. You know, he's got night goggles. And I'm like, Rick, you are not shooting cats at night. I mean, I love cats. I don't know why you think that's funny. But anyway, I'm like, you aren't shooting cats. And he says, oh, not the skinny ones, but the fat ones. They're killing our pheasant and quail for sport, and they've got to go. So this is what happens to me. I have to make sense of that somehow. So then I think, well, I love cats, but I guess if they're killing all those pheasants and quail, they have to go. It's the same way with the blue jays, which I always thought was beautiful bird. I thought blue jays were beautiful birds until he told me they were the felons of the bird world. And they steal other birds' eggs. I'm like, they steal other birds' eggs? That's horrible. They have got to be blown up. I mean, I thought I was adjusting to marriage. I'm adjusting to alcoholism. And there's no healthy way to do it that I have found outside of the Al-Anon program. I just don't know another way to do it. I'm sure there is another way, but Al-Anon is what I found. And so now I don't even want to answer the phone. Now I'm becoming more and more isolated, and I'm tired of putting on this brave face in front of all my friends who later told me that whenever I would leave our little bridge group, I'm still playing bridge. Oh my God, I have to host it on this Wednesday night. With these women I've known since I've been 14. I mean, really, that's the beauty. I thought the worst thing that could happen to me was if I was stuck in Cincinnati for all my life. It's turned out to be the greatest blessing. Really, on Monday night, what did I have? I've had the Pathetic Book Club. I've known those women since I've been 7. We're pathetic because we don't read the books. But anyway, it is pathetic. You know, this is not related to anything, but on Wednesday night, I went to this Christmas party. My husband still works full-time. So we went to this Christmas party, and it was at this country club somewhere on the west side of town, and they had this roaring fireplace with these 2 easy chairs parked in front of it. But then they had all these tables where people were standing and drinking and blah, blah, blah. So I say to my husband, let's go sit in one of those easy chairs by the fireplace. And he's like, okay. I mean, nobody was there. So we park ourselves in these easy chairs by the fireplace, and it's so nice. And then I say to him, you know, maybe we should leave these 2 chairs for the old people. And he said, Kathy, look around. We are the old people. I'm like, oh, good, then I'm going to stay here. But anyway, so the cat, anyway, it's just getting harder and harder. So what happens was, and I'll say this very quickly, so what happened was this. One of my sister-in-laws decided to go to al-anon because she had parents who were alcoholic, my in-laws, my darling in-laws. And she went to al-anon, went to a few meetings, and a couple of the women after one of the meetings said, you know, there's another meeting across the hallway you might also like. And so that's when she got into AA, and very quickly, I mean, really, it was like Alcoholics Anonymous. Very quickly, I have 4 sister-in-laws who are in AA. And they start talking about alcoholism being a family disease. And they talk about being in their family for generations. And they talk about what it can do to families. And I think for me, that's the insidious thing about alcoholism, is because you'd spot my husband. He would be the one in a bar fight. You wouldn't have spotted me. You wouldn't have spotted my kids. And yet, we are suffering just as much, if not more. That's what's insidious about this disease. So, I'm listening to them talk about being a family disease, and as many of you know, I used to always operate under this 8-year plan. Rick was 4 years older than I was. Women usually outlive men by about 4 years in this country. I thought, well, at the end of my life, I'll have these 8 years, you know, that'll be relatively, I mean, that's how much you sell of your peace and happiness, right? I'll have these 8 years at the end, which would be good. So, but if this is true, that this is a family disease, I'm now pregnant with child number 7. So what? Baptists, am I right? Anyway, I'm like, oh my God, there goes my 8-year plan right out the window. I am never going to get away from this. And so that's when I went to my very first al-anon meeting. I went to a beginner's meeting on April 5th, 1982. And I went in and I said to the woman, you know, I don't know if my husband's alcoholic or not. And she said, well, has his drinking ever been a problem in your life? And I said, every time he drinks, it's a problem because somebody gets hurt. And she said, then you're in the right place, because al-anon is a program for you. You have to take your husband and put him in the hands of a loving presence, and you have to concentrate on you and what this disease has done to you. That's what I heard my very first night in al-anon, and I've never forgotten it. And that's why I'm so particular about the meetings that I go to, because this is a program for me, and I can't lose sight of that. And so really it's in al-anon that I learned, you know, the beauty. I don't think it's in this one, but it's in another one of our daily readers. And it's a quote by Thomas Merton that says, the beginning of love is to allow those we love to be themselves perfectly. And that's one of the greatest gifts that I've learned and continue to learn, that al-anon allows me to love those in my life who may or may not be alcoholic, just where they are, just right where they are, without expecting them to be different. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, that we allow, and that's why, you know, Kristen read the reading that she did. That doesn't mean that we allow ourselves to be trampled or, you know, lose our dignity. But what it means is we just accept people where they are. And that's that. I cannot make, especially with these kids of mine, I cannot make them want what I want for them. I cannot. One of my sons, who has been a drinker since he's been 14, in and out of rehab, this, that, trouble, blah, blah, blah. He said to me not terribly long ago, I don't think I can maintain this way of living. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to join Julie's group. I'm like, well, you know, I can get you a number. And he said, well, I'm not done yet. I have no response to that, but okay. But I did call Bob and got a number. So anyway, and sure enough, you know, a year ago or so, he called me and said, do you still have that number? I said, are you kidding? I have it tattooed on my chest, you idiot. So I gave him the number, and on November 30th, that child picked up his 1 year chip. Now, this is what's important. That has nothing really to do with me. I mean, I gave him a number, but he may have been able to make it, find one on his own. But this is what's critical, and I was just sharing this at a meeting a couple of weeks ago. The beauty of al-anon is this, that of all those kids who are in and out of trouble constantly, al-anon gave me the gift of learning how to love them. Not enable, although there's a fine line between parenting and enabling, I know that. But it taught me how to love them without allowing them to make my life miserable, so that none of the other kids ever were angry with any of the others, because none of them made me miserable. I just did the next right thing. One time I shared a car with Patty O, God rest her soul, and we were on our way back to an airport from something in, Ocean City, Maryland, and she was on her way to Las Vegas, actually, to give a talk to parents on how to get your teenager sober. And at that time, this kid had already been expelled twice from the school where I taught. And the secret of getting your kids sober, your teenager sober. And I said to her, Patty, what is the secret for getting your teenager sober? And she said, the secret is you can't. But what you can do is take small steps to interrupt their drinking and hope they stay alive long enough to get to Alcoholics Anonymous. I did a beginners group not so long ago, and my home group, and I had to leave my home group for 25 years because it was a night meeting. They decided to go around the room. It's a format I don't like. I'd be driving home and thinking, God, I can't stand that going around the room thing, and it's too late, and I'm old, blah, blah, blah. So I've gone to enough open AA meetings that I hear that all you need to start a new meeting is a coffee pot and a resentment. So I thought, well, I'm going to start a new al-anon meeting. I'm going to call it the 5th tradition meeting, and I'm going to base it on all these different meetings that I've learned about that seem to work, and that's what I did. And we meet on Wednesday morning, and after a year it became clear we needed to run a beginners group. Now that we were established, we had to have a beginners group. And I think that's important. And I know I hear all this stuff about Zoom. I love Zoom. I hate Zoom. It's great for people that can't get to meetings. I understand that. There's a connection there. That's great. Me on Zoom, this is me on Zoom. I'll be on Zoom tomorrow morning with a group of women and men who I go to meetings with in person anyway. But this will be me tomorrow morning. It always is. So I'm on there and I'm listening and blah, 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 blah. And then who starts to talk. And if she didn't talk like that all the time, so I immediately put my thing on mute, closed my video, and start making beds, and then empty the dishwasher. Let's see, what else can I do? Go back. She's still whining. I'm like, all right, let's see. What can I do? Is there any ironing I need? I mean, I'm an awful Zoom person, but I go to it because I love the men and women in it for the most part. But this is my only concern about it, is that after a beginner's meeting, like this one I did a few weeks ago, and a woman was there who was in so much pain, and she said to me, after I'd given my little spiel and my partner had, she's like, so you're telling me you can't save my son's life? And I wanted to say to her, I can't save my own son's life. But I didn't say that. What I said to her was, what I can do and what you can do is you can try out this program and be with men and women who have lost their children, some of whom have children in recovery, some who have children, they don't even know where they are. And yet they will show you how you can lead a life of grace and hope and compassion and service. But what's important for me when I do a beginner's meeting is this, is you sit there and you're present to the pain, but you're also sitting there, in the other hand, holding out great hope for suffering families. But just to be present, not to talk somebody out of it. I've had people come up to me when I had a son, more than once, in juvenile, who's come up to me and said, oh, they're just working on their lead. That's not helpful to me. What's helpful to me is when you come up to me and you say, Kathy, I had a son in prison too. It's hard. I know that it's hard. Aren't we lucky that we have a group of men and women who understand as too few do? That's helpful to me. That spark of hope, that all is not lost. I have a little magnet on my refrigerator. It's not Al-Anon conference approved. It's St. Teresa, but it says this, and the feeling remains that God is with us on this journey. And that's what Al-Anon gives me, that great hope that no matter what, God, the God of my experience, has always been with me on this journey. So I get into Al-Anon and I'm learning to do things differently. I'm learning to say things like, oh, you could be right. You could be right. And mean it. And mean it. You could be right. You want to talk about, we don't talk politics or religion in our meetings. We try not to. Sometimes, you can feel it getting close, and then, you got to be careful. I understand that. But if there's anything that's been helpful for me in this last year, it's that, you could be right. I don't know how. But, you I'm kidding. You could be right. I never looked at it that way. That's what I say a lot. Anyway, so, the focus is now on me. I'm relying on the wisdom of the group. I'm finding this sanity among these men and women who have learned to live with the spirituality of letting go, this spirituality of not knowing they don't have the answers, of turning their life and will over to the care of God as they've experienced God. And it really, for me, fits right into my childhood, my faith. There's nothing I ever learned in Al-Anon that conflicts in any way with the healthy faith that I was given over the years. Nothing. It works for me. It just works for me. But doing the fourth step and getting a sponsor is what really changed things for me. Because for 12 and a half years, I've been asking this question, what is wrong with him? Why would he say that? Why would he do that? Never once did I say, what's wrong with you? Why did you say that? Why did you do that? What is here? What do you keep repeating over and over again that's working for you? And is it working for you? Never. The fourth step, which sometimes I think, unfortunately, we've turned into an industry, is just about really, keeping the focus on me. In Al-Anon, we talk about the 4 M's, managing, manipulating, martyrdom, and mothering. The 4 deadly M's that get us into trouble over and over again, that muddle our relationships, which are unhealthy. I would not have looked at that without this program. I know that self-examination is important for all the major faiths and others, but I would have missed it because I was so consumed with the family disease. And to share it with another human being, the exact nature of my wrongs, to get down to it. My sponsor, I have the same sponsor I've had since I came in, she continually says to me, lay that at the feet of alcoholism. Lay that at the feet of alcoholism. And that's been helpful. That's been so helpful. I was able to make amends to my husband. I was able to go to him and say, you know what? I have made you responsible for everything from the very beginning. I made you responsible for my happiness. And when you failed at that, as you would, because it was never your business, it was never your job to make me happy, I blamed you. And I never nagged or criticized or yelled. What I did was worse. I erased him as a human being. I ignored him. I just ignored him. And I was never, ever taught to treat a sick person that way, ever. And so I'm going against everything that I learned about what it means to be a human being in this world. And now I have a way of dealing with that, of being restored to the woman that I believe I was created to be, challenged to be, invited to be. But it's only through the principles of this program that happened for me. I wasn't in Al-Anon very long before my husband was killed. He always liked dangerous things. He'd built this little helicopter for himself, although he was never really a helicopter pilot, but he built one. And I used to resent it because I've got these 7 kids hanging all over me, and it's like, oh my God, he's gone, he's in a... I mean, you said to me, well, Kathy, I mean, does it help him? And I said, I think it's the only time he feels peaceful is when he's up in the sky, flying in the clouds. And you said, well, why would you want to take that away from him? And that changed my attitude about that. So that the very last words I said to my husband as he walked out of that door was, you have a beautiful day to fly. Have a ball. And I never spoke to him again. 2 hours later, I'm followed up the driveway with a station wagon full of bad kids. And they pull me over to tell me that, my husband has crashed and died. And moments later, his mother, who was the only parent he had left living in that main house, came over to me after they told her, and she put her arms around me and she said, thank God he's out of his pain. And those words have always meant so much to me. Thank God he's out of his pain. Because I know, and there is great comfort in knowing, that the peace and the serenity that so many of you experience today, he never found. He tried AA for about 6 weeks and it scared the living devil out of him. It was just almost too good. The news was too good. But he's got it now. He's got it now in the arms of a loving, compassionate, and merciful God. And that's always been a great comfort for me. But now I'm left with these 7 kids under the age of 14, and they were just a handful. That's all. I love them all, and they love me. But they were, it was a lot of juvenile court. It was a lot of Cincinnati Police Department at my door. It was a lot of stuff. Plus, I didn't have a job, so he died in May. This little Catholic school called me and said, hey, we need a teacher. We need somebody to teach juniors a course in morality and social justice. Can you do it? I'm like, I don't even have a high school. They're like, we don't care. So they could do that. I mean, I got an expired elementary, but they're like, that's okay. Just come. We'll figure it out. We'll give you your insurance. We'll give you everything you need. It was wonderful. So now I've got these 7 kids. And I have to get subs to go to court, blah, blah, blah. But all along the way, you're with me, and you continue to be with me. You continue to be with me, those of you that are parents, to tell me, sometimes all you can do, you hold them accountable. But again, I had to take them to a grief counselor. And the grief counselor threw them out because they were just being so unruly. And we threw them in with this poor receptionist. And I said to this guy, I don't think I can raise these kids by myself. And he said, oh, you can't. You're understaffed. And that's all I needed to hear. I was understaffed. And so I learned that I could only do the best that I could do. My children made me entirely ready to have God do for me what I could not do for myself. My children were like horseflies. My father-in-law used to say that about horses. If it weren't for horseflies, horses would starve to death. They get bitten and they keep moving forward. And that was true for my kids. They kept me in this program because I don't know what I would have done. I really don't know what I would have done without you, without being able to call you. One time, I could give you so many times when somebody would say, who you might want to call who's gone through this thing is so-and-so. Then I would call so-and-so, and so-and-so would talk to me, and she'd say, hey, there's this another woman. I mean, I would make calls that would take me all over the United States. Hey, I'm running into this. What did you do? And then someone would tell me what they did. And it's that sharing. That's what's so important, that sharing of resources, that sharing of wisdom that we find in this program. And so do I always want to, we talk about the importance of service, which for me is critical. Do I always want to be of service? No, I don't. Do I want to come here in December? No, I got 1,000 people for Christmas. I don't even have my shopping done. But I did get some done in the gift shop yesterday, which was a bonus. But that's how it works. That's what we do. We do the best that we can. But in Al-Anon, sometimes I'll hear people say, well, we say in Al-Anon, you can never say no to an Al-Anon request. I'm like, no, we don't say that in Al-Anon. Where'd you hear that? I mean, I hear so much stuff when people say, well, you know what we say in Al-Anon. I'm like, no, we don't say that in Al-Anon. Where is that? In Al-Anon, this is what we say to people. Learn to say no. Learn to say no. Learn to say, you know what? That won't work for me. And you don't have to justify it, explain it, I don't have to do that anymore. Sometimes I can just say, no, that won't work for me. But the importance of being of service is critical, because you were certainly there for me. I don't know where I am in time. I think I'm all right. So, all these kids, I'm teaching high school, and if there were ever a group I didn't want to teach, it would be high school kids. My degree is elementary, those little kids that you can scare. High school kids, there's no scaring those high school kids, College, I imagine they're more serious, who knows, but not high school. But that's the job that I got. So what's the crazy thing? Those teenagers taught me how to parent. Those teenagers taught me so much. Those teenagers would say, don't tear up your kid's room looking for drugs. You'll just teach your kids how to be better hiders. Don't waste your energy on that, Mrs. Heekin. Don't do that. They were great. Or they would say, hey, we saw your daughter at a party late last Saturday night. And I'd think, really? Because she's grounded. They were very helpful. Very helpful. But that's what the program of recovery does. It opens me up to all kinds of sources of wisdom and compassion. Again, the disease of alcoholism kept me isolated and just running around, we always say like a gerbil on a wheel, with my own crazy thoughts. Recovery opens me up and restores me to you. What a gift. What a gift. My amends really to my kids, I've heard it over and over in Al-Anon. The most powerful amends I can make to my kids is to give them a healthy parent. And I still believe that to be true, even though my kids now are adults. I said to one of them just recently, he's out of town, came and stayed, and I went down to where he was staying in this lower level of this condo. Man, I've never seen so many empty bottles that weren't in a bar. And, that's the thing, trying to find that line between parenting, even though they're still adults. My sister Nancy says, you'll never get rid of them. You think you're getting rid of them when they're 18. You never get rid of them. So I said to him, I have to tell you, your drinking is a concern to me. And he said, what? Really? I said, yeah. If I consumed that much alcohol, I'd be in an emergency room somewhere. And he said, it's not a concern for me. That's the end for me. I'm like, okay, who cares? I got Bob. I don't care. I got numbers, So that's that. I'm not going to nag and preach and just, okay. But he's got two siblings who are very powerful in that family, who don't preach, don't nag, but the power of their example, it's attraction, not promotion. Those two kids are showing the rest of the family how you can be sober and still be crazy and have a great time. It's the truth. They're not a glum lot, my kids. They're a lot of fun. Giving them a healthy parent, even today, is the best that I can do to make a living amends to those kids. But I have to agree with what I heard last night. For me, even though in addition to the meetings that I go to during the week, I'm in two smaller groups. One group is called the Steppers. We go through one of our books called Al-Anon, How It Works. And another group I'm with, small group, we go through Reaching for Personal Progress. So I have a lot of different things going in addition to my faith practices, which still hold me in good stead. But those daily inventories for me, taking a look at my life, an unexamined life is a life that's not worth living, is to take a look at my day and to see, where did I in that day, this is the way I do it, where was I the woman that God created me to be? And I list my service, which anymore is really listening, is being present. Is listening. In Al-Anon, even though we have different stories, there is a thread of grief that connects us all. There is a thread of deep grief for those of us that have watched our loved ones suffer. And sometimes the best I can do for any of them is to just listen and to be present, not only to self, but to others. So I list those little things that I do that I think, held me in good stead. And then I look at the obstacles. And for me, it's always, that, wanting to be right. It's just such a stumbling block. Looking good, and I don't mean physically, but looking good and being right can just trip my spiritual life up over and over again. I got to pay attention to that. But the other thing that I pay close attention to is my prayer and meditation. And it's the same. I hear people say, well, I really can't meditate. Well, you really can. I mean, let's face it, you can. For years, and I still do. I get up at 4:30, now 3 times a week, and I swim. 5 a.m., I'm at the Y, and I'm underwater. It is so boring, but it is quiet and it's meditative, and it's the best thing that I could do back when I had those kids and was trying to raise them on my own. Back and forth, walking meditation. Some people like that. But for me, it's the good old-fashioned sitting quietly for 20 minutes and just trying to let those thoughts float on by. It's just a practice that works. And prayer. Because I'm retired now, I can spend a big chunk of my morning when I come home from swimming doing that. But it has always been important, no matter how busy my life has been, to carve out quality time for prayer and meditation. It's the only way I know, particularly in these times, to stay rooted and grounded. I have said to friends, if you want to be outraged for the next how many years, you can do that. Not me. I don't want to spend my last 4 years going crazy with my hair on fire. I'm sorry, I'm just not. If you want to be of service, then hunker down in service. Then look around and make a difference in your life and in somebody else's life. But I'm not sitting around blah, 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 wasting my breath. Do something, be of service. I think that's important. I believe that every one of us gets an invitation into an intimate relationship with the God of our experience. I happen to get my invitation through alcoholism, and I don't regret that invitation ever. I believe that it has taken me to a deeper place in my spiritual life that I would never have accomplished left to my own devices. So service, again, for me, it's just trying to each day, and in my prayer, how can I be of service today? How can I today build a world of love and compassion? Show me the way. I had been widowed for a good 20 years, and really I took to widow. I mean, I don't want to promote widowhood, but I really liked it. And really, at my age, I know so many women who have lost husbands, and after a couple of years, they're like, you know what? I shouldn't say this out loud, but I love living alone. I'm like, no shit, I know. So 20 years out, that nice little guy from my college days, I know, never married, never, was living out in California, got sober in 1990. Who knew? I didn't even know he drank. Anyway, I don't pick up on stuff very quickly. Anyhow, he contacts me. It's like, I'm moving back to the Midwest to take care of my aging parents. I don't know if you're engaged, remarried, involved, or whatever, but I'm going to be back in Indiana, not far away. It'd be nice if we could meet, maybe for lunch. We always got along so well, and we always did. We were always dear friends. So I'm like, damn. I mean, I love living alone. I love serving myself microwave popcorn for dinner. I mean, there's so many things. Women would say to me, yes, but you don't have anybody to bring you flowers. I'm like, no kidding. I can buy my own at Kroger's for $4 and get what I like. But I sense that God is nudging me. And I don't know if you've ever felt elbowed by God. But I felt elbowed by God, pay attention to this. And so I called him because really, like a bad penny, he was always turning up. So I call him and I'm like, you know what? Let's just have lunch. Let's just do that. I'll meet you halfway. And that's what we did. We did that for a couple of years. We just meet for dinner, meet for lunch. And he's just the nicest person that one could ever want to meet. And then he made the announcement. He said, I think I'm going to move to Cincinnati. And I thought, oh, my God, now you're going to mess the whole thing up. And I'm like, okay, but I can only see you on Wednesdays and Saturdays. That's it, because I'm very busy. And he's like, that's okay. That's all right. So we did that for a while, and then eventually it just became so clear that it would make much better sense to get married. And I say to people, there he is, no ex-wife, no children. That's what I call a double winner. And so we did. We got married. And honestly, people talk about marriage being a lot of work. It isn't for us. I mean, you should marry somebody that's been a bachelor till he was 58 years old. They're very self-sufficient. He doesn't require anything. It's wonderful. I'm gone all the time. I mean, and he's so nice. And when he had 25 years sober, my sister-in-laws from my late husband threw him the big anniversary party. I was out of town. I missed it. But anyway, I mean, it's just great. And he's another example for my kids to see what it means to live a sober life of service. I would never have planned that. I mean, I couldn't have figured that one out. But one day at a time, doing the next, as we say, the next right, loving thing, trying to live a life of understanding, encouragement, compassion to all makes a huge difference. And this is, aren't I at the 10-minute thing yet? Oh, Jesus, Mary and Joseph. Now I'm going to have to make stuff up. Let's see. So all my kids they could have all gone to high school where I taught for free. They did that then. This high school where I taught, oh my God, it was the greatest. They gave me all my medical. They gave me everything. They gave me the last bell of the day free so I could beat my kids home. I mean, they were incredible. And every class we have to start with a prayer in Catholic high school. I always started mine with the Serenity Prayer. And the kids would say, what is this prayer? And I would say, well, there's a handful of you right now in this classroom who are going to need to know this prayer one day. So when you get to where you should be going, you'll know something anyway. But because their father was a Marine and served during the war, all my kids get what's called a War Orphan Scholarship. So every one of them got a free ride to a school in the state of Ohio. And we happen to have really good universities in the state of Ohio. And when they start going off on their father, and what an idiot, flying in a lawn chair with blades when you're married and have 7 kids, I'm like, you know what? You are where you are today because of a lot of his genes. And also, his amends to you was a free college education that he got through his service. Speaking of service, I'll say this. I have one of my boys, he's out now, but he was a career Army helicopter pilot. He was the only one that didn't take the college scholarship. He joined the military at 18. I, of course, thought that was the biggest mistake known to man. I was just like, oh my God. I called my brother-in-law, who's career, and said, oh my God, he's going to, what's that place? He's going to Fort whatever. It's somewhere in Kansas. I'm like, oh, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. This is a big mistake. Wasn't a big mistake. It was a wonderful thing that he did. Very smart, that kid. But he also got in four deployments. 2 to Afghanistan, 2 to Iraq. And he was in Iraq during a very, very bad time. And flying Chinook helicopters at night. And one day before I was going to my meeting, I got a blip. You know how you get those blips on your screens? And it said, Chinook helicopter west of Baghdad shot down, all crew members lost. And I thought, oh my God, that's my kid. That is my son. I know that's my son. What works for me is pacing. So I went outside in the driveway and I started to pace and pray. And I was like, God, if this is him, if he's on that helicopter and he just went down, I know I will be okay. I know you will never abandon me. I know I will be surrounded by love, the people that love me and who I love. I don't want this to be true, but I know if it is true, I sense always that God is with me on the journey. I went to my meeting, shared my fear, shared what I used to, give myself hope, came home, got the email back. I had emailed him and said, let me know you're safe before I left. Came home, boom, the reply. That was my replacement crew. But this is what I knew. There were 5 mothers somewhere in the States who were not getting that email. They were not getting that email. And my gratitude, not only for his safety, but my gratitude for a community of men and women who would hold me, that I knew would be there for me. That's huge. That's just huge. So this last kid did not take the scholarship to to any state school in Ohio. She won a scholarship on her own to St. Louis University. And we all went over to St. Louis University for her graduation. And the president of the university was meeting with the parents in the chapel there and was running late. So we're all sitting there in the pews waiting for this woman to arrive, and finally she comes running up the front aisle. And she says to the parents, I am so sorry that I'm late. I'm so sorry that I'm late, but my 7-year-old just learned the Lord's Prayer, and he wanted to recite it for me before I left home. And so I stood there and I listened to him, and this is what he said. Our Father who art in heaven, how'd you know my name? And I sat there that morning, St. Louis University, and I thought, isn't that the gift? Isn't that the gift that we've all received? That one more time we've been introduced to a God who knows our name and who has brought us here this morning. Because I have time, I'm going to read this, what we call an al-anon. Some al-anons call it the al-anon promises. And then the other half of the room goes crazy and says, we're not allowed to call it the promises. The AA has promises. We're not allowed to call it that. I choose not to get into those arguments. But anyway, so this is part of our literature, but it's called The Promise of Recovery. And this is what you can look forward to. If we willingly surrender ourselves to the spiritual discipline of the 12 steps, our lives will be transformed. We will become mature, responsible individuals with a greater capacity for joy, fulfillment, and wonder. Though we may never be perfect, continued spiritual progress will reveal to us our enormous potential. We will discover that we are both worthy of love and loving. We will love others without losing ourselves, and will learn to accept love in return. Our sight, once clouded and confused, will clear, and we will be able to perceive reality and recognize truth. Courage and fellowship will replace fear. We will be able to risk failure in order to develop new, hidden talents. Our lives, no matter how battered and degraded, will yield hope to share with others. We will begin to feel and will come to know the vastness of our emotions, but we will not be slaves to them. Our secrets will no longer bind us in shame. As we gain the ability to forgive others, our families, and the world, our choices will expand. With dignity, we will stand for ourselves, but not against our fellows. Serenity and peace will have meaning for us as we allow our lives and the lives of those we love to flow day by day with God's ease, balance, and grace. No longer terrified, we will discover we are free to delight in life's paradox, mystery, and awe. We will laugh more. Fear will be replaced by faith, and gratitude will come naturally as we realize that our higher power is doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves. Self-pity, resentment, and martyrdom, rage and depression will fade into memory. Community, rather than loneliness, will define our lives. We will know that we belong, we are welcome, we have something to contribute, and that this is enough. So thank you very much for allowing me to come and share with you this gift of my recovery. Thank you.